A grieving cousin steps into court, accusing music mogul P. Diddy of silencing Kim Porter to hide dark secrets. What she knew could destroy everything. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, cameras, onlookers, all buzzing with the weight of what was about to unfold. On the witness stand stood Jeremiah Porter, a man not known to the public but with a name that carried weight in this room. He was Kim Porter's cousin, and today, he wasn't here to grieve. He was here to accuse. He looked across the room, locking eyes with Sean P. Diddy Combs, seated calmly at the defense table. Diddy's expression was unreadable, but the tension between them cut through the air like a blade. Jeremiah's voice trembled only for a moment as he leaned toward the microphone and said, "She didn't just die. She was silenced, and he knows why." The room fell still. Outside, the world was still spinning. Media vans, protesters, fans holding signs reading "Justice for Kim." But inside, the weight of those words was thunderous. Kim Porter was many things: actress, model, mother of Diddy's children. But what the world didn't know was that before her sudden and mysterious death, she was preparing to tell a story. A story some people in this room would do anything to bury. Jeremiah continued. "She told me if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident. And now, I'm here to finish what she started." And just like that, the silence shattered. The truth was coming, and nobody, especially not Diddy, was ready. Before the scandal, before the courtroom and the flashing cameras, Kim Porter was just Kim. To the world, she was beauty and grace. A model who lit up every room. The mother of 3 of P. Diddy's children. A woman whose life appeared wrapped in gold. But behind the designer clothes and red carpet smiles was a woman carrying secrets heavy enough to bring down an empire. Those who knew her best said Kim had changed in the last year of her life. She was more withdrawn, more cautious, often looking over her shoulder even in her own home. Her cousin Jeremiah Porter noticed it first. The long silences on the phone, the late-night texts that simply read, "You awake?" And then came the conversations. Short, frantic, fragmented. She said she was writing something, Jeremiah would later testify. A memoir, I thought. But it was more than that. She said she was tired of being silent, tired of protecting someone who didn't deserve protection. What Kim was writing was never finished. According to Jeremiah, she was compiling years of notes, observations, and evidence. Things she had witnessed during her relationship with P. Diddy. Not just cheating or industry gossip, but darker things. Illegal surveillance, threats to artists, under-the-table payoffs, even hints at events connected to past deaths in the industry. Kim wasn't just telling her story. She was telling his. Jeremiah remembered one call clearly. Kim's voice was shaking. "If anything happens to me, it won't be from God. It'll be from them," she said. He urged her to go public, to release what she had. But Kim was strategic. She didn't want drama. She wanted documentation, facts, recordings. "The truth will protect me," she had said once, half convinced, half hoping. But the truth didn't get the chance. Behind closed doors, Kim had already begun clashing with people close to Diddy. According to those within her circle, she had threatened to walk away with everything: the kids, the house, the story. And Diddy knew it. He had built a legacy on control. Parties, labels, deals, all tied together by a tight-knit circle of loyalty and silence. If Kim broke that silence, it wouldn't just ruin his image. It could end careers, expose crimes, shatter the myth of his power. Jeremiah remembered one night in particular. A private dinner at Kim's home just weeks before her death. She was distracted, nervous. Her phone buzzed constantly, but she ignored most calls. She said people were watching her, that she'd seen the same black SUV drive past her house 3 times that week, Jeremiah recalled. He thought she was just being paranoid. But then, The laptop she always carried vanished from her car. 2 days later, she told Jeremiah someone had tried to get into her house in the middle of the night. She was scared, really scared, but still, she didn't stop writing. And then, silence. On November 15th, 2018, Kim Porter was found dead in her Los Angeles home. The official cause was listed as pneumonia. Sudden, unexpected, tragic. But Jeremiah couldn't shake the feeling that it was too clean, too convenient. She was young, healthy. She took care of herself. This wasn't random, this wasn't natural. When he asked about the missing laptop, no one had answers. When he called people Kim had recently spoken to, they either didn't pick up or suddenly didn't remember what they had discussed. It was like the moment she died, her whole life was erased, he said. Even the people who loved her started acting like she never said those things. In the following weeks, Diddy publicly mourned Kim, calling her his soulmate. Tributes poured in. The press called it a tragic loss. But behind the tears and headlines, a quiet war was beginning. One between truth and silence. And Jeremiah had made a choice. "I didn't care what it cost me," he said. "I wasn't going to let her be buried along with everything she tried to expose." Kim's death was officially ruled a result of lobar pneumonia. No foul play, no investigation, closed case. But for Jeremiah, it had only just begun. The day Kim Porter died, the media wasted no time spinning the official narrative. Sudden illness, pneumonia, no foul play. Within hours, news outlets parroted the same words, a tragic and unexpected loss. But for Jeremiah Porter, none of it made sense. "She was fine," he said bluntly on the stand. 3 days before her death we spoke. She was laughing. She was planning Thanksgiving. She told me she finally felt ready to release her story. The story she never got to tell. Jeremiah tried to gain access to her house, to retrieve her laptop, the one she protected like her own child. But it was gone. Vanished. Kim's assistant claimed she didn't know where it went. Security cameras? All were conveniently malfunctioning that day. That's when alarm bells really started ringing. He contacted the coroner's office and requested an independent review. But every door he knocked on seemed already shut. Even friends who had supported Kim suddenly became distant, their voices shaky, their answers rehearsed. One former friend finally broke down. She admitted Kim had told her about the memoir, how it wasn't just personal memories, but a vault of incriminating details. Dates, names, locations, video files. "She told me they'd kill to stop this from coming out," the friend whispered. Jeremiah began digging, not just into Kim's death, but into what she left behind. He knew she had backed up her notes online, but every attempt to access her accounts was blocked. Passwords changed. IP addresses scrambled. At one point, he received an anonymous email. "Let her rest. Don't make this harder than it has to be." That was the first threat. The second came when he reached out to a lawyer who had agreed to help release parts of Kim's unpublished manuscript. Before they could meet, the lawyer backed out. "I have a family," he said flatly. "I can't get involved in this. You shouldn't either." Jeremiah began to realize what he was up against. Then came the biggest blow. Kim's original autopsy report, what little was made public, had gaps. It mentioned no sign of trauma, no toxins, and ruled out foul play. But Jeremiah wasn't convinced. He hired an independent pathologist to examine what data was available. The expert came back with a chilling observation. The timeline doesn't match. For someone to deteriorate that quickly from pneumonia, there would be clear signs leading up to it. This looks too abrupt. And yet, no one in authority wanted to reopen the case. Kim had been cremated, her remains reduced to ash before any second opinion could be conducted. The book she was writing? Missing. Her journals? Gone. Her phone? Wiped. They erased her, Jeremiah told the jury, like she never existed beyond the headlines. Then he remembered something. 2 weeks before her death, Kim had handed him a flash drive during a visit. She said, "Keep this somewhere safe. Don't open it unless something happens." He hadn't thought about it in the chaos. When he found it again, buried in an old watch box, his hands shook. On it were encrypted audio files, scanned documents, and what appeared to be snippets from a draft manuscript. She named names: executives, producers, bodyguards, assistants. She detailed hidden rooms in Diddy's mansion, cameras that never stopped rolling, parties where people left broken or didn't leave at all. And then, one chilling recording, Kim's own voice. "If you're listening to this, then something happened to me. Don't let them call it an accident. I was going to talk, and they knew it." Jeremiah wept the first time he heard it. Then he got angry. Her death was no longer a mystery. It was a message, a warning to others, a reminder of what happens when you try to expose the powerful. So he made a choice. He would testify. He would bring the flash drive to court. He would become the voice Kim no longer had. And he would name the man she feared the most. The atmosphere in the courtroom was electric, like the moment before a storm hits. Reporters leaned in. Security tightened. Even the judge sat straighter than usual. All eyes were locked on one man, Jeremiah Porter. He stepped up to the witness stand slowly, holding a single flash drive in his right hand. No lawyers, no prepared speech. Just a grieving cousin, and a voice that had waited far too long to be heard. "I'm not here for headlines," he began, his voice thick but steady. "I'm here because someone I loved was taken from this world, and the man responsible is sitting right over there." All heads turned to Sean P. Diddy Combs, seated at the defense table. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just stared back, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thin line. His team whispered nervously around him, sensing what was coming. Jeremiah continued, now stronger, more focused. Kim Porter was going to speak out. She had the receipts, on parties, on deals, on the abuse. She kept a record of everything. And when she told Diddy she was done protecting him, she got sick, real fast. He held up the flash drive. "She gave me this, said to only open it if something happened to her." Well, something did. And now you're all going to hear what she was trying to say. The judge approved the evidence for playback. A hush fell over the courtroom as a tech inserted the flash drive. The screen lit up. A folder labeled KP:"Truth" appeared. The first file was an audio recording. Kim's voice, unmistakable, calm but intense. "I've seen things in that house that would ruin careers. I know about the cameras, the backroom deals, the people who came and didn't leave the same. And if anything happens to me, it won't be from God. It'll be from Diddy." Gasps rippled through the room. Some jurors instinctively looked toward the defense table. Diddy sat still, but his lawyer scribbled furiously on a notepad. Jeremiah played another clip. This one, a conversation Kim had recorded with a former security guard. "We've wiped tapes before. Orders came from the top, no questions. If she releases that book, she's done." Then a list appeared on screen. Names, dates, payments, and a pattern. Large sums transferred from companies linked to Diddy's business entities, all within weeks of people suddenly changing their stories or disappearing altogether. Jeremiah looked straight at the jury. They paid people to shut up, and when Kim wouldn't, they shut her down permanently. The defense team objected. "Speculation." But the judge allowed the testimony to continue, noting the direct recordings and financial records as supporting evidence. Jeremiah paused, letting the weight of everything settle. She was scared, not of some illness, of him. She told me about the cameras hidden in smoke detectors, the locked rooms in his mansion, the staff who were fired when they asked too many questions. She was building a case. She was ready to go public. And then, just like that, she's dead? No autopsy recheck. cremated, laptop missing, files wiped. People around her suddenly forget she ever said anything. He leaned forward. You don't cover your tracks like that when someone dies from pneumonia. There was dead silence in the courtroom. No one moved. No one spoke. The myth of Diddy's untouchable image was crumbling in real time. Jeremiah delivered his final blow. She didn't die. She was silenced. And you, Mr. Combs, you made sure her voice would never leave that house. But you were wrong. He tapped the flash drive. Because now it has. The judge called for a recess, but the damage was done. Outside, reporters were already shouting headlines. Inside, the jury stared ahead, visibly shaken. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably. And for the first time since Kim Porter's death, people started to listen. The courtroom had barely emptied after Jeremiah Porter's explosive testimony before the world outside erupted. Social media exploded with hashtags like Number Justice for Kim, Number Diddy Trial, and Number Let Her Speak. Networks ran breaking news banners across the screen. But this wasn't just another celebrity scandal. This was an earthquake, shaking the foundation of one of the most powerful figures in music. And the aftershocks were only beginning. Within 48 hours, anonymous tips started flooding the prosecution's office. Former assistants, producers, and even ex-bodyguards came forward, each with their own pieces of the puzzle. Most hadn't spoken before out of fear. Now, Jeremiah's bravery had cracked the dam, and silence no longer felt like safety. One former housekeeper testified under seal that she had seen Kim Porter arguing with Diddy just weeks before her death. The topic? The book, Kim had screamed at him, accusing him of hiding something, warning him that this time she wasn't going to be quiet. She told me, the housekeeper recalled, that if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident. Another came forward, Diddy's ex-security chief who had worked in the mansion for over a decade. His testimony shook the court. There were rooms even I couldn't enter, he said. Rooms with cameras pointing in, not out. Staff were rotated often, told not to ask questions. We were trained to shut up. He described a network of surveillance hidden behind the mansion's luxury, the same one Kim had mentioned in her recordings. He even showed a copy of the mansion's blueprints, marked with restricted access areas, never disclosed to police. But the most shocking came from someone inside the music industry, a former executive who had worked closely with Diddy for years. I knew Kim, she said. She was kind, smart, and tired. She wanted out. And she told me she was documenting everything, not just for herself, but for the people who didn't survive the system. The executive said Kim believed others had tried to expose similar things, but had either been blacklisted or worse, disappeared. Kim told me, they let you shine as long as you keep your mouth shut. As these testimonies mounted, the courtroom transformed from a trial into a truth commission. The judge extended the hearing to accommodate the influx of new witnesses. The defense team scrambled to contain the fallout, but it was too late. The silence had been shattered. Meanwhile, Diddy's image was in freefall. Sponsorships were pulled, collaborators distanced themselves. Even longtime supporters began to question the man behind the empire. His PR machine released vague statements about respecting the legal process, but the public wasn't buying it. And still, Jeremiah wasn't done. He returned to court with new evidence. A phone Kim had hidden in a locked drawer at a friend's house. On it were voice memos, text threads, and drafts of emails she had been preparing to send to publishers. She named names. She hinted at the existence of even more recordings. In one message, she recorded just 3 days before her death, Kim said, "I'm scared. I feel like I'm being watched all the time. But I can't stop now. If something happens, make sure they know it wasn't an accident. Make sure they hear me." The jury listened to the recording in silence. Some looked visibly moved. A few wiped away tears. The prosecution ended the day by presenting a timeline of communications, payments sent to a private security firm, The day after Kim's laptop vanished, shell companies that received sudden deposits around the time of her death, and NDAs issued to key employees weeks before the tragedy. The implication was clear. This wasn't a coincidence. This was coordinated. The defense tried to argue that there was no direct evidence tying Diddy to foul play, but the weight of whispers, recordings, missing files, and fear painted a damning portrait. Outside the courtroom, rallies grew. Activists and artists gathered, chanting Kim's name, demanding accountability, not just for her, but for others lost in the industry's shadows. And for the first time, other women began to speak out, names once too scared to surface. Dancers, assistants, even former artists who shared eerily similar stories of intimidation, surveillance, and manipulation. Jeremiah watched all this unfold with quiet resolve. He didn't want fame. He didn't want money. He wanted her voice heard. The courtroom was silent as the jury filed in, their expressions grave. Weeks of testimony, evidence, and whispers of fear had led to this moment. Jeremiah Porter sat in the front row, Kim's flash drive in his pocket, his hands clenched in his lap. Across the room, Sean P. Diddy Combs stared straight ahead, the mask of confidence he wore now cracked at the edges. The foreperson stood. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of obstruction of justice, conspiracy to suppress evidence, and willful tampering with witness accounts. The room exploded. Gasps, cries, reporters scrambling. Jeremiah lowered his head, exhaling for what felt like the first time in years. Justice hadn't caught every thread of the truth, but it had finally begun to pull the curtain back. Diddy was taken into custody, pending sentencing. His empire, once untouchable, crumbled almost overnight. Sponsors severed ties. Artists withdrew. Investigations spread beyond him, reaching into the depths of the industry's most secretive circles. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Some cried, some shouted, but all carried the same message. We heard her, and we believe her. Jeremiah stepped up to a podium. This isn't closure, he said quietly. It's a beginning. Kim wasn't just a mother, a model, or someone's ex. She was a woman trying to tell the truth, and she will never be silenced again. He held up the flash drive. She left us this, her story, her voice, and now it belongs to the world. Kim's final words, once hidden, echoed through every news cycle, every post, every conversation about power and silence. And her truth lit a path for others to follow.